Today I come before you to ask one simple question. Could Paul Gallati, regular high school student, part-time runner, full-time sleeper, have prevented 9/11? Experts disagree, but let's examine the evidence. First, Paul would have to actually arrive on time to stop anything. Unfortunately, historical simulations suggest Paul's natural location is usually in his bed, sleeping, or standing somewhere saying, "Yeah, I was too lazy to do that." This already creates a problem. Time-sensitive historical prevention requires what historians call not forgetting why you entered a room. Suppose Paul did manage to travel to the correct location in this alternate timeline. His main strategy would likely be warning people by saying extremely vague phrases like, "Guys, I have a feeling something bad is about to happen," or "Trust me, my brother said something about this. I think he had a dream about it one time." Or he could be direct and say, "I am an Omega Wolf boy from the future. Believe me, a plane is about to hit the towers." Unfortunately, historical precedent shows that vague prophetic warnings, or direct ones, rarely outperform actual institutional intelligence systems. The theory suggests that if Paul confused enough people, they might pause for several minutes just trying to understand what he was talking about. And let's think for a minute. Since Paul is a Twinkie Omega Wolf boy, could Paul just Twinkify all the terrorists? Paul is on one of the planes on 9/11. Just imagine this. Paul is on a plane in 9/11. He just begins talking about how much he loves being an Omega Wolf boy. And this inspires the terrorists to all become Omega Wolf boys together. So they reroute the plane to Omega Wolf Boyville, and they all become Omega Wolf boys together. I believe this is the most likely to succeed. Now we reach the biggest historical argument against Paul's success. If Paul successfully changed history, then certain pop culture phenomena might never exist, such as Twilight, including the possibility that his own chaotic presence might be slightly different across timelines. Scholars argue that Paul's existence is indirectly tied to the survival of certain early 2000s cultural artifacts, such as Twilight. The theory goes like this. If Paul prevented large-scale historical events, then cultural trends would shift differently. Certain teenage supernatural romance, like Twilight, might never become popular, and without that cultural wave, Paul would never have developed his legendary status as an Omega Wolf Boy of Destiny. In this context, Omega Wolf Boy is not a literal biological classification. It's a symbolic title meaning confident, slightly mysterious, always appears in group photos like he just remembered he left the stove on. Some theorists argue this would create a paradox where Paul's existence is tied to cultural continuity itself, meaning if he changes too much history, he risks preventing the conditions that made him Paul in the first place. My final verdict is yes, Paul could have prevented 9/11. Probably not through strategy, possibly not through intelligence, but maybe, just maybe, through pure Twinkie Omega Wolf Boy presence, confusing history itself into becoming an Omega Wolf Boy itself, he could have done it. And according to alternate timeline physics, that might be the closest thing to saving the world that a high school student running on Twink juice and Yowie could ever achieve.